initially Jennifer said to me, I've got this idea of an opera that has to do with this heist, with this art theft. And at the time, you kind of immediately go, okay, so here's what happened.
Yeah.
And it was in instantly, because this notion of like several paintings stolen from a museum, the story kind of unfolds from there.
Someone gave me this news article about an art theft that they thought might make an intriguing opera story. When you start down the road of writing your first opera, everyone on the planet sends you stories. After Cold Mountain, David Devan and I were talking about me doing a project, and he said, what would you like to do? And I thought, a chamber opera. I thought, you know, that would be really different from how huge Cold Mountain was. And so I thought, this story might be kind of it's a modern story, it's more contemporary, very different than my first opera.
So these paintings were stolen, they're stashed away, and then there's a certain amount of mystery around the fact that the stolen paintings, what happened to those paintings? Were they destroyed? Were they sold?
Right.
And then that led me to go hop on the Google machine and go into all kinds of art heist stories.
Right.
And learning, of course, that when art is stolen, mostly the culprit is apprehended.
Right.
It's usually a pretty shoddy job.
Yes.
It turns out there is no like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of suave and debonair activity going on.
Yeah.
But it's usually a pretty clunky operation.
Yeah.
And the art is found. But you were
Yeah.
intrigued with this idea where the art may or may not have been destroyed.
Right, but the thing I thought was the most fascinating was they were named artists: Picasso, Monet, Matisse, Gauguin. We also had Lucian Freud. This was the one that really caught my attention. The fact that it was a woman in the painting, whose eyes were not open, kind of fed us with this story, because our main character was a woman. So
when we were all together, I remember laying out the paintings and go, okay, all of these thieved paintings, which one is the one that makes you have an emotional reaction to?
Yeah.
And
it
was
the Freud.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, something about her.
The way she looked.
The way she looked, eyes were closed, close up.
Yeah.
The Freud's hand, that kind of
the texture of
textured flash, and that feeling of there was some ambiguity in is she asleep? Is she awake? Is she dead? Is she alive?
Yeah.
It had the paint itself had tension.
It's really a vivid picture. I mean, it was amazing how all of us picked that one. I mean, pretty quickly too, without hesitancy.
Yeah. And then we came up with the idea of having the art being placed in the hands of someone who absolutely
didn't value it.
No value.
Yeah.
And then what would it take? And this was my as a librettist. This was my challenge. Was to so art lands in the hands of someone who has no understanding of art, no relationship with art. What does it take for that art to create an emotional reaction in the heart and mind?
But I think what is interesting that what you have created with the characters, it's they come up from a completely different world than these artworks.
That's
that
true.
You would think they would have no relation with what we would think of the art world, which I think is really interesting. How and then the idea how a piece of art can affect someone or evoke something in a person that is not really related to art so much.
Yeah. The idea of a heist too.
Yes.
I mean, it makes for a really good story.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of heist operas as far as I'm
aware.
No, there aren't. That's true.
But I think we've kind of definitely moved on from the heist story to a very personal story. And
it's about the characters.
Very character-driven story, I think, and kind of digging very deeply into their emotions, into their minds. Really, it's really an emotional journey now. I feel.
And also transformation, I think, or the question of does art transform someone? The experience of art, or in this case, the theft of art, could it transform someone?
Actually, for us, the most important thing in the story that we really want to, make clear that art has an effect, an emotional effect, and it's not just money.
Right.
It's not just about the value, the financial value of it, but the emotional value, which ultimately comes to, back to what we are all doing, because, music has an emotional value, which kind of want to make pass to the audience.
As this is unfolding, we're in the second workshop, second half of the piece.
Yeah.
And now we're going back through from the beginning.
Yeah.
What are they? Knit one, purl two. We're moving all the way through. Knitting it all together.
Yeah.
And then you're left with, so now you're getting a sense of the momentum, which I know you.
I have a sense of it by the time we get into the room. But I always think, is this working for the character? So having known Meredith Arwady for a long time, my big concern is just making sure it fits her voice. It's like making a suit of clothes. You want it to fit well. You want it to look so natural that you wouldn't even look twice, but you do want to look because it fits that person really well.
She's also got an amazing, a particularly amazing, fascinating instrument.
And her voice is incredible. Yeah, it is. I've always been kind of blown away when I've heard her sing. She also, there's a personality in her acting. She's got a comical side, but a very serious side, and she can flip it like that. And I don't know many singers who can do it quite to that extent. But I know when we were talking about this too, I was thinking that can we build this opera in a way where we don't, I guess where you can look at the characters, but you don't completely decide whether the crime that is supposedly committed is actually committed. And I thought, can you build a story that way where you kind of ride the emotional line in the music, but you don't reveal what actually happened until
I knew from the beginning you were very interested in mystery.
Yeah.
That seemed to be something that was intriguing you too.
Because maybe because I don't know any operas that are mysteries.
Of the crime.
Yeah, the mystery of the crime, and did they do it, and what would be the reason, and there was just something about that kind of it seemed like an artistic challenge to figure out how to, or maybe if I could do it, if I could create that.
Right. Just something about the mystery that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think there's the crime mystery, but there's certainly also the mystery in the characters.
Yes.
I feel, which for me is something that you have developed so both in the music and in the piece so clearly. And what I find is really for me nearly more interesting even than the crime story, because it takes us to where the reality of the crime story and the emotional reality or the dream kind of meet and come together and intertwine all the time. And that's where the mother figure comes into the game, which I find really the core of the piece somehow.
So how do you put something like this on a stage? Because I'm always curious because you obviously see things. I'm like, I hear things, but you must have pictures in your head. Or
Well, I have for the moment I have a lot of pictures in my mind, and obviously the idea of the canvas, the paintings, the framework, the empty frame is something that I think we will exploit in the set design, and then it's those relations in between the characters. I think sometimes you could nearly imagine it like a ballet, in a way that the people meet, they interact with each other. What images actually you can create on the stage, so that these relationships are clear both visually and in the music.
If you're doing a libretto, because this was an original story, it's not a story that already existed. Do you visualize this stuff? Because I find this fascinating.
I see pictures. I just see pictures first, and then I just write into the character, and I overwrite and overwrite and overwrite and overwrite until you find those contrasts. You know, the hills that people will die on. The boundaries, the thing that they won't cross, and the places they won't move into, and then what would it take to get them there? there.
This is like when I'm writing an opera, the first half of it's always really hard to write, but by the time I get to the second half of the opera, the characters are already telling me what the music is supposed to be.
They have their own life.
They do. And it's like they're dictating what's going to happen. Everything from the flow, and sometimes they catch me off guard. I think a scene is going to sound one way, and they will say, it's got to be a different way. It's real. It's shocking.
Well, once we got into the zone, you definitely would have a moment. You were like, oh no, she would not say that.
I know.
And I was like, totally right. She would not say that.
I know her so well. I know Mona
once you
so well.
find the rhythm, you know,
You
of the
do live
character.
with them, and you get to know them, because I think they stay in my head. They do not go away for the entire time of the writing, and sometimes they stay in there even beyond the writing. So, for this opera, I must be at the 16-month mark. They've been in there every day, having conversations, and it's weird. You get to know them.
All right.
I mean, it's
right.
totally kind of
So
creepy.
they say more than they actually say in the piece,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. They're there, and so I think about, oh yeah, Mona would. She wouldn't do that.
All right.
And, you know more about them than you probably would like to know about them.
All right.
In reality, but I think that's also the thing that makes them like viable in terms of putting them on a page in music. You were really good about building the story too, since we didn't have a predetermined. This was the thing about Cold Mountain, is you've already got the novel there,
Right.
you know the characters,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of, Charles Fraser did an amazing job of kind of giving you the background on everyone. To build something from scratch, I thought was terrifying, but probably for you who have written plays, and you
find that muscularity, and to be able to do it in the room with the two of you, was so much fun, and not typically, I think.
Actually, I was getting to sit there and just watch you do it.
But no, I mean, typically that's not something that I get to do, which is a luxury, to be able to like dream a little bit on the front end with all three of us
Right.
too. Because I've kind of done it with just the composer, but to have the person that is actually going to direct it. At
Yeah,
the
that
same time.
actually, that helped a lot. I felt like it. I don't know. Maybe it's just a different viewpoint or something, or just.
Well, I think each one of us has a different perspective.
I always think about orchestrating whenever I'm writing anything. The idea of having artwork as the jumping off point for the colors in the instruments, weirdly, that inspired me as well.
So do you see color when you hear music?
I don't, but when I'm deciding what instruments are going to play in any piece, I have a tendency to think, all right, it's a big blank canvas, and how do I make certain musical gestures stick out? So I think about what a painter would do, like why would they use a touch of red in this spot or blue here, and so I tend to think that way. I don't have this synesthesia, which is the
right.
viewing of, I guess people see colors when they have that, when they hear certain keys. I don't have that, but because my entire childhood was based around visual elements, because my dad took me to so many experimental art happenings, there was just something about the idea of having a contemporary story that had art as its basis. Something about that was inspiring.
Well, that you're definitely identifying with the artist that is not present in the piece,
Right.
but that we hear about,
Right.
or the artist that we hear about. I think, no?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. But it does come down to the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, in the
definitely.
end, I think that's the most interesting aspect of a story.
Yeah, especially with the chamber opera too. This kind of compression of ideas anyway.
Yeah.
So those characters end up living in full, like serious relief.
So do you have a preferred child? One one of your characters that you love more than others? Or
In this opera, you
Yeah.
mean? You know what? I love the mother figure because she is mystical, because
Right.
she's not really there, and because she is in a dream sequence. She represents an innocence that seems absent from all the other characters.
Well, it's certainly something that we can all, identify with, I guess.
Yeah.
The presence or the absence of a mother or someone who.
Doesn't she represent innocence too? I mean, a kind of a safe feeling.
And also being loved, I guess.
Yeah.
Being accepted as you are.
Right.
You and I had talked about too that Mona, the lead character, is so much like people we grew up with.
I know, yeah.
In childhood.
It's interesting because I think you have to draw back on those memories when you're right. I don't know. Did you do that when you were doing the libretto? What did you do?
Totally.
You were thinking about, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Like Mona's world is not unlike a canvas.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's hemmed in
Yes.
many, many ways.
Right.
You know? And I grew up with, so many people
Right.
like her whose life was
In a very small
very
space,
small.
yeah.
People that learn in some kind of heartbreaking ways to how to take up as little space as possible
Oh,
on
man.
the planet.
Yeah.
And what does that mean when someone like that finds a way, a mode to get out, to shake that off?
It's an interesting question. And I know when we were talking about this too, I was thinking that can we build this opera in a way where we don't, I guess where you can look at the characters, but you don't completely decide whether the crime that is supposedly committed is actually committed. And I thought, can you build a story that way where you kind of ride the emotional line in the music, but you don't reveal what actually happened until
I
the
knew
very
from the
end?
beginning you were very interested in mystery.
Yeah.
That seemed to be
Yeah.
something that was
Yeah.
intriguing you too.
Because maybe because I don't know any operas that that
The
are
mystery
mysteries.
of the crime.
Yeah, the mystery of the crime. They didn't really know if the art was destroyed or not. This was a giant question mark that was hanging over the original story. So I didn't realize how much art is stolen during all times of history. This was kind of when we started looking at this. It was a little bit of a shock how much art had gone missing. And I thought, good grief, there's an entire industry here built around recovering the art, the insurance of the art, and those who would steal, but they don't have a way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But in this story was also kind of the thing about a mother trying to protect a son who stole the art, and her weighing, like, what has greater value?
Art versus life somehow.
My son's life?
Yeah.
My creation or someone else's creation.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are at the end of we have workshop 1, workshop 2, and we're really going to be we move through the whole opera, but there's one part
Yes.
that is kind of undone
Right.
in the best possible way.
Right.
Pointedly
Right.
undone, and that is the ending.
The beauty of a mystery opera, you may not know the ending, and we're going to have multiple endings.
This was a thing from the very beginning for me.
It was. And I have no idea why it was. Maybe my brain was just rebellious and thought, what if you have more than one ending?
Some people come one night, they might see one ending. They come the next night, they see a separate ending.
Right.
I think it's incredibly satisfying. When you said it,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
That's good.
Why I've never experienced that.
I haven't either. I don't know if there are any other operas that have more than one ending.
And it fits beautifully with the story. It captures the sense of mystery.
Right.
That was your intent, I know, from the very beginning.
Did she do it? Did she not?
No.
But what is that?
Right.
We sound very mischievous.
I am mischievous.
Well, I think each one of us has a different perspective on the story, and of course we have to. So it's great to be together and develop it together. It's a whole journey and adventure.
It is a journey, and you look at these people because you're also hoping these characters will have this journey. Will they change as they go through the story? Who knows?
Right.
Who knows?
Well,
There's only one way to find out.
How's that?
They have to attend the opera.
Come see it.
Gotta come see it. Cheers.
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 Here's to opera.